Alright guys, we're here at the camp. We made it after the long hike. And today we're going to talk about a knife that I picked up. It's a budget knife from Camillus. It's decent. It's a big, thick, chopping, batoning knife. Now, I have the Camillus, I don't know how you pronounce it. I have this brand of machete that's just like this, but 4 times as long. And I love it. It's my favorite machete. We bring it out here all the time. Everyone that we camp with likes it. It's great for batoning and chopping. It's super heavy. But it's super heavy. This is a much lighter, smaller option I'm excited to try out. There's a couple things we're going to test today. One is like the original sharpness, how sharp it comes from the factory. The next is how well it can chop, baton, and then finally just my overall thoughts after using it. This is not an in-depth review. This is not a 6-month, post-purchase review. This is just my initial thoughts. And then I'll probably bring it camping and have it featured in some of the camping videos. But for now, it's just my initial thoughts. So let's go ahead and get started with the sharpness test. All right, so we're here at the camp kitchen, work in progress, the table here as a workstation to check out the sharpness of this knife. Now, typically with a pocket knife, the first thing I do is see if it can cut my hair. If it cuts hair, I consider it pretty sharp. This one does cut a little bit of hair. You probably won't be able to see it, but it does cut a little bit of hair. So it's decently sharp on that front. It feels decent. I think it's got a pretty steep edge to hold that edge longer. You know, it's a chopper. It's not made for slicing. So I wouldn't expect it to have an extreme angle, but it feels pretty good. So we're just gonna carve some sticks, see how it does. It does decent. You could feather stick with this knife. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it'd be the best option. But you probably could. Definitely not a carving knife. As far as sharpness, I'd give it a 7 or 8 out of 10. It's decent. It's decent for a factory edge. If you went in with a strop or you went in and did your own sharpening on it, you could probably get it a lot sharper. You could probably get it a lot sharper. But it's decent for a factory edge. Fishing tip number 32, drink a lot of water. I'm thirsty. So I'm just kind of perusing the natural woodlot we've got here. There's a lot of fallen limbs that we've kind of consolidated into one area. A lot of limbs we've consolidated into one area. I'm just going to grab some. It's still a little bit wet. That was a nice crackle. All right. Got a little handful of sticks here. Different moisture content, different thicknesses. Just some sticks. And now we're gonna do some chopping. So we'll bring you in a little closer and do some chopping test. All right, we're back at the chopping block here. I'm gonna situate some sticks to start chopping. And really all I'm gonna do is see how well it can cut through, branches, wood, sticks, logs at a cross-cut kind of angle. Not with the grain like batoning, but downward. Little stuff like this, I'd expect it, no problem. It's kind of a stupid test. Move on a little bit bigger here. Yeah, she's not a chopper, but that's kind of what we expected, right? And you have no leverage and no swing to swing with. This is really just made for batoning. I don't think anyone is buying this knife to be chopping with. I think that's a fair assessment, right? You could do it if you had to. I really would not recommend it. I mean, chopping even little stuff like this that's an inch thick, you're gonna be wasting a ton of calories when you could just saw through it or hit it once with an axe. That's not the intended purpose of this knife. You also won't be able to stick it in there like that. All right, so for the next test for this little Camillus batoning, chopping knife, whatever, we're gonna do some batoning. Now this is where this knife should absolutely shine. I already see a couple things that I think will deter from its ability, but we're gonna give it a test on just a few different sample sizes here. Obviously we can't go too big based on the length of the blade, but we're gonna give a couple different sample sizes. We're gonna give it a test of a couple different sizes here. So this is like, I don't know, an inch and a half thick rotten stick. Not bad, not bad. Let me cut my finger off here real quick. Yeah, so that thickness of the blade, how wide that is at the spine here, really helps wedge that wood off. It's almost like a little baby maul. Works pretty good. Try something a little bigger here. This isn't ideal wood, but it will give it a representation. Okay. Not bad. All right, so we've done up to about a 2-inch piece here, and it does decently. I wouldn't say it does amazing, but it does okay. Now let's baton off a section of a cut piece of wood. That was really smooth. It's also old, kind of half rotten wood, so not really that impressive, but it does cut it. I'll try another piece here, right down the middle. This is pretty thick. All right, that cut through pretty good. Now this is dry. This is a stronger piece of wood. It does much better in this situation. This thicker wood, it can bite into more, it can wedge it off and split it. It does really well. I'm finding a couple issues. We'll talk about that in the closing thoughts, but not bad. I mean, for what it is, it's not bad. We're just gonna do this one for fun right here. Little guy. Yeah. Not bad. All right, so we've put the Camillus chopper to the test. We've done, 2, 3, 4 different function tests, and I think I've come to my initial thoughts, my initial conclusions. As far as sharpness from the factory, it's about standard. It's okay. It's not great. Again, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. It could shave my hair if I really pushed. It certainly wasn't razor sharp. It was decent though. For what it is, I think it's plenty serviceable. Number 2, chopping, not batoning, but chopping, not good. Not good at all. It's so short and stubby, you have no leverage. You cannot chop, I would not chop at all with this knife. But it's whatever. That's not what it's made for, right? We have to think of a product as far as what it's made for. And it certainly wasn't made for chopping. Now batoning it did pretty good. The 2 issues I have with batoning with this are, 1, it's so short you're limited to whatever this will fit around and cut through, and then having room to hit it on the other side, right? So if I'm cutting through this piece of wood, I've only got, 1 inch to 2 inches to hit it on the back side. Problem number 2, the spine of this knife is incredibly textured, almost like they made it into a saw, like all the gimmicky machetes do. They've got that saw back serrations. This is never gonna saw through anything substantial. This is, in my opinion, this is worthless. You could say it's jimping, but it's extremely aggressive for jimping. You'd wear out your thumb really fast. I don't like it. And the only reason I say that is because it's gonna tear up whatever you're hitting it with. Is that really a big deal? No, probably not, but it's a little thing that I don't really care for that much. If you were gonna have it, I'd say maybe have it less severe, less steep, less sharp. But I really don't care for it. It's a feature that I don't think is worth having. As far as overall feel and usability, I think it's decent. It's heavy, it's chunky, but it is short, it is compact. The handle, I'll tell you right now, I hate the handle. It's just cheap plastic. It might be nylon reinforced, it might not be, but it's just cheap plastic and I'm really not a fan. If I owned this, I would definitely rough it up or take a Dremel or take something, put some grooves in it, put some texture so I could really get a good purchase on it. Because it's slick, it's cheap, the texture it has doesn't really offer any kind of confidence. Just not a big fan. But I mean, all of that being said, for the $20 you pay for it, I think it's a fine knife. It's not going to win any kind of contest. It's not going to be the best knife you own. It's not going to be the best batoning knife you own, but it'll get the job done, especially if you're limited on space and length. So I think it's decent for 20 bucks. That's all I got. Still a little bit wet. And we'll cut that part because I look like a sissy.